Hey, people, welcome to episode 30 of the Caught by Happy podcast. Today, I'm speaking with a couple of my favorite people, Freddy and Mary Martinez. And I know these people through a little hobby of mine, a little pastime, which, if you've listened to this podcast on a regular basis, you've probably heard me mention my interest in the Buffalo Bills and watching football. It's something I've been doing since I was like 10 or 11 years old. And following and rooting for this team has been a huge constant in my life. Moving to Virginia didn't stop me from feeling a closeness with my Bills Mafia family. In fact, you could say I'm a card-carrying member of the always growing RVA Bills backers. We meet at Hurley's Tavern up in Glen Allen, Virginia. That's in the west end of Richmond to watch the games. Before that, we'd meet at the old Mulligan's restaurant. That was in the city. I've been hanging out with this group going back almost 20 years now. And Freddie's been a big part of that. He's a staple in our little group. He's one of the OG members. The whole family is. And the great thing about Freddie is, I got to tell you, he's one of the happiest dudes I have ever met. Always greets you with a smile and a hug and has a genuine interest in how you're doing, what's going on in your life. And the dude just spills that positive energy out of him. He has a gift, I think, of bringing people together and making everyone feel welcome and included. So that's why I wanted to talk to him. And of course, Mary, now she's the only Army colonel I've ever known. And she's a very dedicated mom, and she's passionate about what she does. She's served for 30 years. She's been deployed to Kuwait and spent some time in Iraq, and all this while raising two kids. And we're going to get into what that was like for the family as well. So stick around. This is a good one. We kind of hit a bunch of different topics, and there's some little nuggets of wisdom in here I think you'll want to hear. But before we jump into the conversation, I just want to remind you that I'm always on the hunt for my next Caught by Happy guest. If you have a story you'd like to share, hit me up at caughtbyhappy@gmail.com. Let me know what you want to talk about. Maybe we'll get you on here. I also would like to remind you to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you're listening if you can. It just helps to spread the word about what we're trying to do here. So check out some old episodes as well and share them with your friends. Share. Hey, are you thinking about starting your own podcast? I got to tell you, it's really not that hard to do. All you got to do is figure out what you want to talk about, get yourself some equipment, and record some episodes. You're going to need a podcast host, though, and I found Buzzsprout to be hands down the easiest and best way for me to launch and promote and then track the performance of my podcast. It's listed in all the major directories like Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. All I have to do is just upload it, and then Buzzsprout does the rest. Lucky for you fledgling creators out there, I put a link in my show notes that will get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan. Following that link lets Buzzsprout know that I sent you, and it helps me support this show. And they can be a great resource for you as you get started as well. They're great. They have a ton of guides to help you find the right equipment at the right price. You get a fantastic looking podcast website. You get some really cool audio players that you can embed into other websites or drop into your social channels. You get to see how people are listening and tools to promote your episodes and a whole lot more. Podcasting is just not that hard when you've got the right partners like Buzzsprout. And if you're thinking of diving into it, go check out my show notes, click the link and sign up, get yourself a $20 Amazon gift card, and help me continue to be able to create this podcast. All right, so I talked to Freddy and Mary with the backdrop of everything that's going on in our country right now. And if you're listening here on the first week of June, you know what I'm talking about. First of all, the COVID crisis that we've been dealing with for the past 3 months or so. And now we've got this nationwide 100% justifiable outrage and protests that were sparked by the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officers. So I couldn't help but reach out to Freddy this past week as all of this stuff is going down, because he's got that infectious positivity and his genuine love of people. And sometimes you just need to reach out to those people in your life to give you a little bit of grounding when you feel yourself spinning out of control or when you start to feel helpless. So I'm glad I got to talk to them. It was nice to do it not in the context of watching football game together. We were just hanging out like people do over video chat. Would have much rather done it in person, but hopefully we can do that soon. All right, so I talked to Freddy for about 20 minutes or so before Mary comes in. I had a great time talking with them. So here's my chat with Freddy and Mary Martinez. I just wanted to chat with you, man. I haven't talked to you in forever.
Well, I actually wanted to bring sort of substance to this conversation. I did want to talk about a few things, man. Yeah, man. Not just talk to Matt, but, put things out there and just kind of talk about life as a military husband, and my wife. I wanted the colonel to get on board and all that as well.
Absolutely. I that's exactly what, that's why I'm here, man.
Yeah.
I'm here for the substance, but I'm also here to catch up.
Yeah, definitely, man. How you been? You been okay?
We've been all right. It's been all right. It's
Yeah. No,
definitely
hey,
been. I think the first couple of weeks were a real tough adjustment period for us to try to have everybody at home at the same time and try to get work done and try to get the kids some sort of education, but also giving them the opportunity to be kids and play and do things outside and get some of that energy out. We've kind of fallen in now, I guess, into a routine of what that stay home looks like.
yes.
So it's I guess it's gotten easier. I wouldn't say it's been great, but it's gotten a little easier.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that. I don't have little kids, as you know, you're aware. I had other concerns though as a parent. My son, Marco, he's away right now. He's in San Antonio. He had just finished boot camp. He had joined the Navy, finished up boot camp. He's in the reserves, but he's out in San Antonio going to school to be a Navy corpsman. So if you're not familiar with the corpsman, it's basically you're a medic in the Navy. So
Yeah.
he's doing that right now. And sure enough, the first week he's there, someone in the class prior to him pops positive with COVID-19.
Oh, really?
Of course, this is a big, to do because you have close quarters, these kinds of
Sure.
things. But luckily he's been good. Marco's very resilient as well. So he's doing fine. As a matter of fact, he's about, I think, 2 weeks away from graduating from this course. And then he'll come back to the East Coast. He's going to be in North Carolina for another few months to do combat medicine training. Then he'll be stationed, the reserves, his duty station would be Richmond. So he will go up there, one weekend out of the month, 2 weeks out of the year for his training.
He'll be living with you guys down in
Yeah,
Chesapeake?
he'll be living at home with mom and dad, while he's here.
Yeah.
So Mary's stoked about that. Of course, she's over here giving me like she misses the boy. I do too. So right now we
Yeah.
have my nephew Danny. He returned from boot camp. He's actually stationed in Norfolk at one of the amphibious ships. He was kind of like me. I had joined the Navy to see the world, and they stationed me like 20 minutes away from where I grew up. Look. That's the downside of living in this area because
Right.
we're the world's biggest Navy, and guess where the biggest Navy ships? The biggest bases is right here.
That's r that's
It's
right.
either here or San Diego. That's where the biggest probability.
And you're still here.
And I'm still here. I mean, I've left, I've come back, I've followed. It's funny because one of the funniest things about my relationship with Mary, some of the things that we've encountered, is just her experiences in the military versus mine. She's in the Army, but yet she's been on more boats than I ever was, and because I was a corpsman and I was stationed at a hospital.
Uh-huh.
And I never made it onto a ship, believe it or not. I could have, but I never did. She actually was in charge of a little platoon of little boats, and she spent more time on a boat than I did. So
Man.
isn't that crazy?
Well, let's go back to talk about before you even joined the Navy. I mean, you and I know each other. We're friends.
Right?
But really, it's in the context of the Buffalo Bills. That's how we know each other,
Yeah.
is through the Bills group. And man, I love seeing you every Sunday or the Sundays that I do get to see you now that you're back in the Virginia area.
Right.
I don't know much about how you came here in the first place. So
Okay.
tell me, first of all, tell me where you were born, what it was like growing up, who you grew up with, and how you got here, how you got to the Navy.
Okay. So I was born initially in Panama City, Panama. So I have to
Mhm.
say, I have to add Panama at the end because everyone thinks, oh, Panama City, Florida. And no, so it's Panama City, Panama, Panama Canal. But anyways, this was like back in 1981. My mother had remarried a Mexican American who was stationed in Panama in one of the military bases there. And it happened to be that his next duty station was going to be Fort Eustis, Virginia. And for those who are not familiar, Fort Eustis, Virginia is located in Newport News, which is, where I grew up. I arrived here at the age of 7 and have been here ever since. In one shape, form, or another, I went to school in Newport News. Tidbit information here is kind of pretty cool. I attended Denby High School with Mike Tomlin. He was in the class ahead of
Oh
me.
yeah?
Yeah. And yeah, hometown, hero for us. He's one of those guys that a lot of us, who are friends with him, we look up to, and it's like, oh man, I can't believe that Mike, did it. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I grew up fairly in a military household. That
Hmm.
was always something that was a part of my upbringing. It's very difficult to not be in that environment. The reason being is that the military here in the Tidewater area is very big. You can't help but to be exposed to that.
So you were 7 years old
Yes.
when you moved here.
Yes. I came here speaking nothing but Spanish. That's,
Hmm.
the language in Panama is Spanish. I had possibly, if I recall, it was 4 months of English initially. Okay.
In a
And
school?
yeah, and if you can imagine, I had to take that and I was put into a regular second grade class. And that was before the English as a second language, type of stuff. That was
Hmm.
before any of that special treatment that kids nowadays get. So I was forced to learn on the fly. I remember it being very difficult for my mother because at the time, long story short, she ended up getting a divorce. She was, my sister and I have a younger sister. We were raised by her, and it ended up being a situation where mom was struggling. You can imagine she's been plucked from Panama, brought here.
Yeah.
She didn't know the language either.
How did she do with the language?
She didn't do so hot. That was one of the frustrations. I mean, she took whatever job she could get, and initially she was working at the Williamsburg Hilton. It's like one of the resort hotels out there in Kingsmill. So she was out there. That's where she initially started working. But the thing was, is that anytime that I would have any questions with homework or something like that, she couldn't help.
Right.
So by hook or crook, I was able to get it, and this kind of, you fast forward a few years. I remember having to teach myself English with what they were teaching me in school. I would add to it. And Matt, I read so many dictionaries, so many encyclopedias
Yeah.
that today, some of those trivia questions you go on trivia night, like I know the answers to those shits because you know what? All the freaking encyclopedias that I read growing up, you know?
So you were reading you were getting like a math lesson or whatever, and you had to go look up the language that the test was given to you in.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. So you were learning English along with math or whatever, social studies, all this other stuff.
Yes. And I remember my mother just being so frustrated because, I mean, imagine, I mean, you're a parent. You want to help your children any way that you can, and you
Yeah.
just can't. You can't do it. But, I struggled, but I still made it. And my biggest claim to fame is I was the fourth grade spelling bee champ. I made it into like the regionals. I got ousted in like the last round. I made it to the finals, but I couldn't. I couldn't beat the girl that she beat me. But yeah, that was my claim to fame.
Now, were you still in contact with your dad after the divorce?
No, you know what? So that's another subject. My father, my paternal father, in Panama, I never had contact with him. Unfortunately, it was one of those situations where it just never worked out, and
Mhm.
I never spent any time with him. It wasn't until many years later that I attempted to. I mean, that's another wow, Matt. That's a story for another day. I mean, maybe today, I don't know. But the thing is that I never had that connection with him, and as a matter of fact, I never saw him. I tried to, and there was a situation where I found out certain things about him that I was like, I'm probably just best off just not even worrying about it.
So you've never met him?
I met him, I just don't remember him. I was
Right,
so
right.
young, and he passed away a few years ago. My aunt reached out to me. She had tried to get in touch with me, and she told me, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, I never knew him. So, yeah, that was one of those things. And, there was a lot of trials and tribulations that took place in my mother's life. Fortunately, I lost my mother back in 2009. And I really don't have any other family here in the States except for my sister. Well, as far as, that I'm close to.
After your mother got divorced and you guys were living down there,
Mhm.
and you're going to school, did she wanna go back to Panama? Was she happy? Why did she stay here?
Yes, so she did want to go back to Panama. I mean, that was one of those things where it was struggling back and forth. Of course, she misses her family. She is struggling in a place where she doesn't know the language. She's having a hard time providing for her kids, those types of
Yeah.
things. But she also realized that this is probably going to be the best opportunity for my children at this given moment. Speaking with her brothers and sisters in Panama, I have most of my family over there. And I told her, I said, Idalia, you just need to stay out there and just try to make it. And she did. She stayed. I'd like to say that those struggles brought her and I, we had, my gosh, when I tell you my mother's my best friend, and when I lost her, I mean, it was devastating because she truly, truly was my best friend. As an
Yeah.
adult, I would speak to her just like I speak to you. I mean, very frankly and as a matter of fact type of thing. It was difficult. I know that my sister and we looked at her as a superhero. You don't realize it when you're going through it as a kid because kids aren't supposed to know they're struggling. Kids don't know what they don't know. And it's not until later that you realize that, damn, when I start putting my life together and comparing to where I'm at today, we had a rough. You know what I mean?
But
You
she
know,
did her job. She
oh my
protected you from
God,
all that.
she
She
did.
shielded you from all that.
She did her job to the fullest. So
Yeah.
definitely, it was one of those situations where I learned a lot from her. I like to say that my kids are who they are because of her. I could have gone down so many wrong paths, Matt, because I didn't grow up in the best surroundings, you know. But I was
Hmm.
able to realize very early on that the struggle that we were going through was not something that she was responsible for per se. And it really does, that's why some of these topics right now of socioeconomics are very important to me because sometimes people are put in situations that they never saw themselves being in, but somehow they never abused the system, they never did anything wrong, and they were able to make it. And you know what? And I think as a kid, when you see your mother doing all the right things, that sticks with you.
Yeah.
It sticks with you, and that's where my philosophy of how I raise my kids came from. And knock on wood, really, I have some amazing kids, and I don't say that because they're mine. They are.
No, you do have amazing kids. I mean, I'm lucky to know your family, and they are really great,
Yeah.
great kids.
Well, I appreciate that, and of course, Mary adds a different element. There's a different level of understanding that she has, especially my daughter. I don't wish this on anyone, but when your daughter gets older, you experience certain things that you're like, holy shit,
Yeah,
but
like what?
I'm just saying everything, the interest in boys and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And it's like, I was a boy. I know what boys want. I know what they do. I mean, so, those kinds of things. And then Mary, she brings in just a specific, I don't know if there's I guess, a tenderness to that relationship. Because as much as I love my daughter and we get along great and all that, there are some times where the harshness has to come out. It just does. And I
Right.
don't know necessarily if I handle it, correctly every single time. But, you
Well,
know,
Mary provides that balance.
yeah, Mary comes in and she kind of like sifts through, it's like a sifter, and figures out, okay,
Right.
so Freddie did this. I'm responsible for this, kind of
You would
thing.
think the Colonel would be the harsh
You
one.
would think the colonel would be the harsh one, but she's not. I am. So she's
Well,
actually right here next to me.
oh yeah, we're gonna bring her in.
Okay, we
Yeah,
are.
we're
All
we're
right.
we're definitely gonna bring her in.
Sure,
Before
sure,
that, I
sure.
I wanna know about once you got a little older and you yourself joined the Navy.
Okay.
What made you decide that you wanted to do that?
I don't think that I decided that. It's hard to explain. All right. So there were some issues going on at home. Unfortunately, I cannot get into this. It's a very private matter. There's some issues going on at home, though, that I tried to run away from. I had, for the most part, my mom, she remarried, and that's where the issue comes into play. I will tell you that there were some issues taking place, and I had applied to different colleges. This was like around my senior year and all that, applied to different colleges, and the situation wasn't changing fast enough for me. And I looked for, okay, I haven't heard anything back from the colleges that I applied to, so what else can I do? And I decided to join the Navy.
Were you a good student?
No, in the classic sense, no. I had a 2.7 GPA. That was because I wasn't trying. I was one of those that was bored by school. I didn't
Mm,
do homework or anything like
yeah.
that. I just did the exams, the tests, and I would ace those, and that's how I would stay afloat, man. Classwork. But if it was, because back then homework counted for something. Nowadays, like homework doesn't really count as a grade anymore for a lot of students.
Oh, right, right,
You
right,
know,
right.
so no, back then you were getting, dinged for not turning in your homework. So from that standpoint, I could have done better. So, I joined the Navy, and my initial reason for going was to get away from just the stuff that I was, that I felt I was struggling with, at home and the environment or whatever it was. I'll tell you that it's probably one of the biggest, the best decisions I've ever made. That led to so many different opportunities moving
Yeah.
forward from there.
What year was that? Was this in the 90s?
Yeah, it was in the 90s. So that was, I joined the Navy February 1st of 1993.
Oh,
And
wow. You're an old man.
I am, yeah, yeah. And I ended up doing 5.5 years, and I stayed there for about 5.5 years. I was a Navy corpsman, specialized in, I was a surgical tech. Most of the procedures that we would do, it would entail like, ear, nose, and throat surgery. So a lot of head and neck cancer and a lot of little kid
Mm.
stuff, like the PE tubes and the tonsils and adenoids and things like that. So I was in there passing the instruments, cutting, sewing, along with the doctors and things like that. So that's what I did in the Navy.
And you said that you spent a lot of the time here in this area, but where else did you get to go?
When I initially joined, I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois, or I call it the Great Mistakes, right? That's what a lot of people call it. Once I was done with that, I had to go to my A school, which is like your basic corpsman school. So you learn how to be a basic medic, all right? And that school was located also in the Chicago area. So Great Lakes is near Chicago. I did that, and then from there I went to a school in San Diego, California, for my specialty. And my specialty at that point was surgical tech. I did that. Then I came right back here. And I remember putting on we have this thing called the dream sheet, right? Where you're like, yeah, I want to go here, I want to go there, whatever it is, right?
Like a vision board.
I don't know if it would be called a vision board. It was like,
Uh-huh.
it was a board of hopes and dreams that could, I mean, whatever you want to call it. But I remember putting, Sigonella, Italy, Rhoda, Spain, Okinawa. These were all military bases where we had a presence. We had hospitals, all that stuff, right? And so the day comes where they're handing out orders, and they're like, Hospital Corpsman Recruit Martinez, you are going to Portsmouth Naval Hospital in Portsmouth, Virginia. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I grew up like 20, minutes away from that. I mean, I grew up in Newport News. It's right over across the Hamptons Road Bridge Tunnel. So, that's what I did. And then I stayed here. The
Yeah.
only other thing that I did do was there were a couple of volunteer missions where one of my doctor and I, we went out to Cuba, to Guantanamo Bay, and we did some surgeries out there for a couple of weeks. They're so isolated out there. And you can imagine Guantanamo Bay it's a little sliver, and it's mostly a Marine base, so they have very limited access to clinics and things like that. So we would go there and provide any type of emergency type surgeries or anything that needed to be done for them to be fit for duty in that duty station.
So you got out after 5.5 years, you said?
Yeah, I got out after 5.5 years. I ended up getting a little bit. Well, Matt, if you know me, I have a lot of varied interests. Okay, I like a
Yeah.
lot of different things, and
Yeah.
I'm a crazy fanatic for just life in general. Anyway, so the thing is, I was bored with patient care. It ended up becoming a situation where me, as a people person, I was no longer getting stimulated by the meeting of new people. In fact, they were becoming things that kept me late at work. There, and people started to become things. That's an issue.
What do you mean?
Well, so say for instance, in some of the surgeries that we would do, I mean, we're taking people's like their voice boxes out, we're taking out their tongues, we're doing muscle
Yeah.
flaps and reconstructing the esophagus and things like that. And these were people who were smokers for many many years, whatever it is. And I remember some of these surgeries. I mean, Matt, I tell you, 14, 16-hour long surgeries because first of all, you're taking out all these body parts, but then you have to reconstruct that. And sometimes you're making a new esophagus out of intestines. They actually take the small intestine, and the small intestine and like the esophagus have the same, it's called peristalsis motion where it squeezes.
Uh-huh.
So that's what the ENT surgeons do. They reconstruct things like that. And
Wow.
we would team up with the plastic surgeons and doing the micro blood vessels, ligations where they're putting everything together. I would stay late sometimes doing these things. I would sometimes leave in the middle of the case because we'd have a shift that would come in these long cases. I'd come back the next morning and they're still working on the same person.
Wow.
So it got to a point where we would do surgeries on these people, and you know what? That freaking vice of smoking would not go away. They'd have a hole in their, would cut open in their trachea, they would have a stoma. I would see people smoking through the freaking stoma. So I got to a point where I was like, man, do I really want to be doing this? It just got to that point, and I started realizing that, you know what, hey, I'm an E4 in the Navy. I had just met my wife. I did a little cross service action and I kind of jumped a couple of pay grades. I should have never been involved with her. You know, it was kind of a hush hush, type
Yeah.
thing. But I got tired of it and there were other opportunities that could come my way. One of the things that I realized was, all right, man, there's money to be made in medical device sales. And at the time, that was when, I mean, if you think about it, I knew all the tools, familiar with them. I'm using anything and everything that these companies would come into the OR with. And I started to talk. I befriended one of the medical device reps, and I said, "Hey, Rick, hey man, if you guys ever need anyone or whatever it is, you let me know, man, because I'm thinking about getting out of the Navy and doing something different." My different was actually going to be a flight attendant with United. That was my different. I mean, it's a crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems like if you if you would pursue that medical training that you have, you could really
Yes. So what ended up happening was I interviewed with United.
I cannot imagine you
Dude,
being a flight
no,
attendant.
no, no, no. So now, all right, let's be real. I mean, Mary's here in the room, right? But let's be real with it. And then why did I want to do it? I wanted some hot ass flight attendants, right? And I get to travel the world. Are you kidding me? You know what? I
Yeah.
mean, why wouldn't I do that? Right?
Right. I mean, that's what I was gonna ask. I mean, after 5.5 years and you're in Portsmouth and you've got your board of Italy and Okinawa and all these other places that you wanna go, I don't blame you for wanting to get out.
Right. So it didn't work out. I made it through two rounds. I mean, they flew me out to Chicago. I did the interview out in Chicago. And I mean, I was like, oh man, I'm going to get this job. And then, the next couple of days, I get the letter and like, wah, wah, didn't get it. Don't know
Oh,
why. I
man.
mean, I spoke Spanish and all of that, and it would have been a good asset. But regardless, Rick tells me it was the same, during that same time frame. And so I was trying to interview because I was getting out of the Navy, looking for a different job, whatever. Rick says, Freddie, you will not believe this. They have an opening and I need an assistant in my territory. And I said, you've got to be shitting. And he says, no. So it ended up being a situation where he put me in touch with his boss, went through the interview process. I ended up landing the job. I got out on July 31st of 1998, and I started working August 3rd with the new company. I didn't skip a beat. And then
Wow.
right away, I tripled what I was making in the Navy.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Now that we're 22 years past that, do you ever regret not sticking it out with the Navy and seeing what it could have brought you career-wise?
So
That's probably a tough question since your wife is still currently serving in the Army
yes,
and you're living the military life.
yes. Well, so here's the deal. We would have never been able to maintain. We would have never been able to get together because it would, or at least it would have been very difficult because she's a different service. There was just no way for us to always line up and be in each other's life. And then I was also enlisted. She was an officer. It just wasn't.
Let's bring her in.
You want to bring her in?
Yeah, let's bring her in.
So here she is. Yeah.
So Mary, Freddie's been telling me about his life, and I'm so happy he has. I don't know that side of him. All I know of you guys is pretty much Sundays during football season. The deep talks that Freddie and I had when we went up to a game 5 years ago, whatever it was. He was telling me about his time in the Navy, and he just kind of glanced over. Oh yeah, and I met my wife.
Right.
Why don't you tell me about where you grew up, how you got into service, and what it was like when you met this guy?
Well, I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York.
I'm very familiar.
Yes.
You guys should have been to the house.
I've been to your childhood home.
That's right. That's right. The Met Room.
Yeah, the Matt Harrington Memorial Suite.
I don't think you want to go back there. The cats have overrun.
Yeah, have they?
Yeah, it's really bad. But you know what? And this is so sad because the reason I joined the military, I was enlisted before I was an officer, and I truly enlisted. First of all, I want to say truly feel like I can't say no, right? I was just approached. I was like,
Yeah.
sounds cool. Like I had no, I didn't grow up with this passion. I was just like, sounds like something that'll be fun. And my brother actually enlisted first. So he recruited me and got an extra rank for that, right? So he got promoted and and then I went in. I was in the reserves enlisted.
And it was really just like, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah.
have anything else that you were thinking about doing? You weren't trying to go?
No, I was in school. I was in college. I was
Oh, you
at
were?
Niagara University at that time. That wasn't, I'm not a great student. So I was doing okay. it was, it was a way to help pay for school. And I had a swimming scholarship at the same time. So I was doing okay and enjoying the reserves. But in the specialty that I chose was administration. I flew through the ranks. I was up to an E6 within a couple of years. And then, at the same time, my first major at Niagara University was hospitality. I had to toss around. That's right. I had social work too. I had a lot of different majors at Niagara, a lot. And I got to the point where I'm like, listen, you need to lock yourself in or you have to go.
Wow, yeah.
So at that point, it wasn't an ROTC, but I had to make a decision. And what I really wanted to major in was physical education. And those years, I think it left and came back. It was a major at Niagara University, and then they dropped it, and I think they brought it back. But in those years, it wasn't there. So I ended up transferring to Canisius. And at the same time, I was like, you know what? I kind of like this military thing. So I want to take it to another level. I already reached an E6. I was like, well, I need to go to officer because there's only a few more enlisted ranks to go. And I'm like 20, 21 years old, 20 maybe. So I went through ROTC at Canisius and then graduated and commissioned as an active duty lieutenant in 96. And my first duty assignment, well, it wasn't. My first duty assignment was actually Fort Knox, Kentucky. But my training was here at Fort Eustis, is where I'm a transportation officer, and that's the home of transportation. Well, now that it's at Fort Lee, but it started over here, was the home of transportation at Fort Eustis. So I didn't meet Freddy for the first 4 or 5 months, but I loved it. Like my dream, for some reason, I don't know if you're in Virginia too. So you might have dreamed that, but I just viewed Virginia as the most beautiful place on earth.
Really?
Yes. So it was always my dream to live in Virginia. So I'm like, I have to go to Virginia. So I came to Fort Eustis and I'm like, well, I don't want to leave. I want to stay here. So I fought to have that order changed. I never went to Fort Knox because I didn't meet him in my training. I would have never met him if I had gone to Fort Knox.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up staying at Fort Eustis for my first assignment. And then that's when I met him in May of 1997.
How did you guys meet?
So, all right. So I had just gotten over a breakup a few weeks earlier. I had gotten over a breakup, right?
I'm the rebound.
Yeah, she's actually the rebound.
Pretty long rebound.
And so what happens is, of course, you and your girl break up, whatever, you're feeling down about yourself, how can no one not love me and blah, 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 blah. Whatever you want to tell yourself, right? Or you could go the other way and be like, F you, whatever, I'm going to go all out. So I must have was a mix between the two, okay? And anyway, so my boys, so remember, Newport News is not too far away from Virginia Beach once we're down here, right? So my boys and I, we were like, hey, let's go to Virginia Beach and go hang out. And there was a bar, okay? Named World
we
Brothers.
are not supposed to be here today.
I know. Like everything about the story, it does not equate to her and I being together right now. But anyways, so we're at the bar, and the reason why it doesn't make sense is because Mary doesn't drink. She's not a drinker. Mm-mm. She happened to be at that moment, that at the same weekend, the same time frame, everything. Her two roommates that she shared an apartment with, they said, "Hey, Mary, you never go out with us." They're two dudes. They're like, "You never go out with us. Come hang out with us." Blah 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 blah.
I was already in bed.
Yeah, that's right. She was in bed, and they dragged her out to go out with them, right? Because
you did not want to be there.
No.
Listen.
Her perfect night is going to bed at 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Call it a night. Hey, she's good, right? So, anyways, they said, "Hey, Mary, we're going out. Why don't you come out?" Me and my friends, we were out that night, and I happened to see this girl. She's really tall, and I had this thing for tall girls with long legs and all that stuff. And I see her sitting there, and I'm like, man, why isn't this girl dancing with anyone? She's just sitting there. Just Matt, when I tell you, she was just sitting there looking around and
yeah.
So I just started talking to her, and next thing you know, we're dancing, and and we had a good time. Her and her roommates actually gave me a ride back to Newport News because that's where they lived as well. And my friends were like, have fun, whatever. So that's how we met.
Is it a taboo for Army and Navy to commingle like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, not necessarily.
Well, not necessarily Army and Navy.
It's not Army and Navy. That's not the issue. The issue is that I was an enlisted sailor and she was an officer. So technically, on the outside, if there was no one else, I'd have to salute her every time I walk.
What's the movie? An Officer and a Gentleman?
Yes. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, but that's how we met. And the funny thing is, another connection that took place in all this was that, so going back a few years, to when I was younger, being from Panama, I didn't know what football was, American football.
Mm-hmm.
To me, football was soccer. And I remember my friend Greg, he would tell me, he's like, hey man, do you watch football? And I'm like, no, I don't know what that is. I said, yeah, but I was thinking he was talking about soccer, But then he asked me, he says, no, you throw the ball. And I'm like, no concept, because soccer, you don't touch the ball with your hands. He says, you should start watching football. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I started watching football. Now, you got to remember, I mean, this is back in 84. Okay.
Yeah.
Back in 84, I didn't know what college football was, what professional football was. I didn't know. All I know is it was on TV, right? And at that time, they would air some of the Virginia Tech games. And there was this a local hometown hero that was just wrecking up stuff in Virginia Beach, in Virginia Tech. And he was from the Norfolk, Virginia area. And his name is Bruce Smith.
Never heard of him.
Right? So it ends up being that I'm following Bruce Smith in his, last couple of years at Virginia Tech. And I didn't realize what was getting ready to happen. I mean, I didn't understand the draft concept, or I didn't know anything.
You didn't know anything about professional football. You were just watching.
I didn't know anything about that,
Yeah.
And at the time, it also wasn't like they were televising the draft on TV like the way that it is today.
Right.
That's not something that we ever really heard of. It ended up being that, my favorite player, quote unquote favorite player, ended up going to the Buffalo Bills. And he gets drafted in 1985, and then the rest is history. I wasn't like this I shouldn't say I was an avid Buffalo Bills fan. I was an avid Bruce Smith fan. And over the course of time, that's when I really started getting into it. It was funny because my leading petty officer that I was stationed with in the Navy, he was like in charge of our department. He was from Schenectady, New York, and he was a Buffalo Bills fan as well. So through all of that interaction, and it's coming up in the 90s, that's when everything was getting good with the Bills.
Right.
I was hooked, right?
You started watching the Bills as they were on that rise to.
Yes. They were kind of crappy still in the 80s. It wasn't.
Oh yeah, they were pretty crappy. 85, 86.
Exactly. So, I mean, but I watched the team and all that, and then it's funny when her and I meet. Fast forward back to that story. She tells me that she's from Niagara Falls, New York, and then I'm like, "Oh, are you a Bills fan?" And she's like, "Yeah, blah 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 blah." I was born a Bills fan, kind of thing. So
my dad wasn't letting anybody in that house.
Right.
You better be bleeding blue and red. You ain't coming in that house.
So that's how it ended up being. And it's funny though, because I feel that my love for the Buffalo Bills actually lit a fire in her, because she would watch the Bills, whenever her dad would let her be in the same room at the same time, kind of.
If I could shut up long enough, right?
Was it like a superstitious type of thing too? Like you can't be in the room because they got the ball and there's 12 minutes left.
Right.
You weren't in here when there was 13 minutes left. So get out.
Right.
You're wearing the wrong sock.
So. Yeah, so I mean that's what it was, and then later on, when we decided that what, hey, we love this squad so much that why don't we go ahead and give our money to Ralph Wilson, and get some season tickets.
And you guys,
it was Father's Day. There was a deployment gift.
Yeah, it was.
I bought him Father's Day tickets.
Yes, you did.
That keeps giving. 8 years later, 9 years later, we keep giving.
I mean, I guess it's a super important thing to have something in common when you first meet, that you guys can both enjoy, a hobby that you guys can both enjoy together.
Oh my goodness. I think it's
Yeah.
Plus in our family, him and my dad, they were so tight.
Yeah.
They were so tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my brother, we go to games. Well, try to go.
Yeah, we try to at least, whenever we can, see what we can do about putting together a game where the whole family goes. We try to do that from time to time.
Even Kelly already said this year, I mean, God willing, we can go to games. But she even said this year, she's like, Mom, I want to go to a game this year.
Yeah, you guys still have your seasons, right? You guys still have those season tickets?
We still have them.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with them.
Well, like I mentioned before, I was lucky enough to go with you. I guess it was 5, maybe 4 years ago. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it's been a while. I can't believe that it's actually been that long that you and I went.
But we met up at the last season.
True, and I think that's probably why it seems that way. Yeah,
and this isn't a Bills podcast, but I do want to say, like, it's such a great atmosphere up there. I love the family atmosphere. Like the place that we tailgated this past time
Hmm.
was some dude's house
Yeah,
who lived
Matthew
right
McCoy.
behind the field. Yeah, he lives right behind the field house. I mean, it was just like hanging out in somebody's backyard, grilling out, having fun. You know, you want to see the crazy stuff, you can go across the street and
Right.
see the crazy stuff. But at our age, you get hurt. You get
Hey,
hurt.
speak for yourself, man.
Right,
I'm crazy too now.
exactly.
No, I'm just joking.
Oh
But
my God, he doesn't know how old he is.
so,
Oh my God.
no, I mean it's funny because I discovered that spot through James Henderson, who he's one of the guys at Hurley's. We have the spot
Mhm.
where we watch the Bills, and he says, "Yeah, me and my father are going up there. You know, we have a trailer that we take up there, whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, let me know if you ever want to come up there. I'll let Matt know, and we can set you up with a spot and all that." And yeah, one thing led to another, and then next thing you know, I show up and there's a swimming pool in the backyard, and people are actually diving in. This is like the beginning of the season, when
Yeah.
it's still warm out, and people are using the swimming pool. They're grilling, and I'm like, I think I like this spot though. I think I can see myself coming back to this, and that's
Yeah.
been my spot ever since I discovered it. So yeah,
Yeah. It's a unique atmosphere for sure. I don't think there's any place like that in the league that has a residential area like that right next to the stadium. And
yeah, I would. Yeah, she has mentioned that the only other spot that I would say would be Green Bay. Green Bay,
oh yeah.
it's located
Mhm.
right in the neighborhood, and
Have you guys been there before?
yes.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we went there a couple years ago. As a matter of fact, one of the things that Mary and I try to do is every year we try to visit a new stadium. We're trying to see, we want to check off all the stadiums in the NFL. So yeah, we've been to Green Bay. Her brother lives up there in Madison, Wisconsin. So he was able to get us some tickets for a Green Bay game.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd love to see that stadium.
Yeah,
Best stadium, best football right there.
yeah, I'd say
It's really great.
that stadium right there, and as well as Chiefs Kingdom.
Oh
There's
yeah, yeah,
nothing
yeah.
like
That's
it. I
another
mean,
good one.
it's hard to explain. I mean, it's like the gods of football live in those places.
And the
I mean,
fans are really
seriously,
great.
and the fans are
Yeah,
Yeah.
just, it's
they're
a
both
different
of them.
level, different level.
Well, you're a different level fan for sure. I mean, you know your shit when it comes to the Bills and the players and the schemes and all this stuff. It's like you study this stuff. And I actually thought I was thinking about this before when I started this podcast, how cool it would be to do a weekly right after the game,
Hmm.
me, you, and Ed, or like some other people, just like put all our thoughts out there, like first gut reaction of what happened in the game, and then record for like a half hour or whatever, and then the next day after we've had some time to process it, record the second half hour and talk a little bit more about what we saw in the game.
I'm interested in that. I have thought about that myself because you know what? I watched the game through a lens of. It's funny because I didn't know anything about the game initially, but I coached my son through Pee Wee League for a long time, and I was able to start to understand schemes. I was able to start to understand some of the the reasons why you do.
I remember I thought Marco was going to be the next Andre Reed.
Well,
I know.
once he reached the 11th grade, he took one hit that he was
Oof.
like, "Yeah, I think I'm done."
Yeah.
It was one of those things where, listen, I mean, because it takes a specific mindset to get to that next level. If
Yeah.
you're not willing to put in the work in the off season to get your body right and all that, it's not worth it. You're going to get yourself hurt. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, my son did not have that mental fortitude to be disciplined to do those things. And I can't beat it into him. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Well, you will do." I can't do that. It has to come from within. It's a very personal sport. I'm not doing the workouts. So I said,
Sure.
listen, hey, you need to follow your passion wherever it is, and whatever that is. It ended there. I mean, but you know what? Up to that point, I mean, I would say he could run some really great routes, had great hands. That boy could catch anything. He really could.
But if your heart's not in it, if it's not what you want to do, that's not how you want to spend every waking moment of your life,
Exactly.
then there's really no point in
Hmm.
beating up your body and getting hurt.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So yeah, but he's got different passions now, and yeah, he's happy with what he's doing. And hey, as parents, we're really proud of everything. So
All right, we got a few minutes left, but I want to talk a little bit more. I got a couple more questions, but I want to talk a little bit more, Mary, about your career path because you're still in. You're a
Mhm.
colonel.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be 30 years, July 30th.
Have you ever been deployed in a war zone?
Twice. I was
Well,
gone 2003 to 4 and 11 to 12.
where were you?
I was in Kuwait both times. The second time I stayed in Kuwait. The first time I traveled up into Iraq and back into I lived in Kuwait.
How was that for the family?
Well, 2003, I left him with a 4-month-old and a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
So for him, that was bad, I would assume. For me, I was still postpartum, so the memory of that whole thing sometimes isn't there,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard coming back because I miss certain things.
Sure.
First year of life for Kelly, potty training for Marco, things that moms are supposed to see.
Right. That must have been extremely tough.
That was hard, but I will tell you, 11 and 12 was a little bit harder because they could talk. They could tell me that they miss me or whatever. So it was like, it was a different kind of hard. The first kind of hard was hard because I'm missing something. And then the second one was hard because I knew they were missing something.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how was it for you, Freddie?
So the first go around, I mean, that was back in. I mean, Marco was 2 years old, and actually Kelly was 7 months old. It was.
I can't even watch my kids when my wife goes to the store.
Well, so interestingly enough, though, Matt, it goes back to the story that we were talking about with my mother. For whatever reason, it was almost instinctual for me to be able to just know how to do it. It was easy. It was easy for me. Difficult from the standpoint of, okay, my wife is gone. I wish she was here to see some of these things. But as far as what I needed to do to make sure the kids were okay, a little help from, the daycares and all that stuff when I was working, whatever. But I was able to get it done. It's those experiences, there the first time, and then the second time when they were a little bit older, that I believe really cemented that relationship that I have with them today. I don't think that if we had never gone through that, I think that my relationship would probably be a little bit different because I was able to, to really bond with my son, show him the ways of a man kind of thing. With my daughter, I was able to show her what you need to look for in a man, what it is that you need to look for in the male figures that you accept into your life, right? The other thing too, I mean, there were girl things that she would talk to me about that I probably, a lot of men don't ever have those kinds of conversations with their daughters just because they haven't had to have them. You know what I mean? So in that situation, it was a curse and a blessing. I mean, her and I, we had our share of problems. We were able to recover, and we are where we're at today. I think a lot stronger of a couple and the family. But I think it was those experiences that really tested our marriage. It really tested our fortitude as human beings, because there was also that worry. I mean, gosh, what happens if she has to go, forward into, Iraq, and at that point in time, you remember they were finding the mines all over the place, and
that's right.
So, and that first deployment there, we're in November. I had to call you. It wasn't easy. The second deployment we had, yeah,
we were able to, I mean, technology played a big part.
Technology had changed
of how,
but the first one there wasn't all this stuff. No, didn't have any of that.
So it's different. Yeah, but I mean, to get to your question, it was difficult, but it was almost instinctual to know how to do the right things. I don't know. Mama came through me, and
yeah. I mean, your children are incredibly blessed to have you both as parents, especially if you can do that, step in as a father and channel your mother and do that. Mary, what are your goals for your career going forward? Obviously this is a lifelong commitment for you. It seems like because you've been in for so long.
Yes.
Are you going to be general one day?
I am not going to compete for it. Well, it depends. Where are you putting this? I don't want to slam any doors. but in all honesty, my intention is not to compete for general. And that's something I have to, like all my other ranks up to this point, you automatically go before a board. But once you, for brigadier general, you have to opt in. And I don't. Honestly, everything that he's given up to get me this far. And honestly, I'm so thankful. I mean, he deserves it, right? He deserves this. This promotion, this last one that we got, was life-changing for us, for our retirement, for everything. It was just we're just going to live comfortably.
We cemented our future, basically what she's saying. We, there's a lot of stuff that I give up. Careers, education, been put on hold. As a matter of fact, my graduation for my bachelor's was actually supposed to be yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I just started a new job as well. So a lot of my going back and forth, trying to support her, I mean, has not been too, it hasn't been the best for me. And now one of the things that I've been able to do is design my career the way I wanted to. She's given me the opportunity to do so. And we have reached a point where, you know what, if everything was to end tomorrow, we wanted to retire, we could, we could. We bought some land in Panama, and that's where I think
Did
eventually
you?
we're going to end up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to end up doing, my plan is 6 more years. And according to my plan, I'm most likely going to stay here. So his stability, he can start.
Oh, throughout the next 6 years, you're going to
Yeah.
stay
Mm-hmm.
in Chesapeake.
Yeah.
Right.
I just moved to Fort Eustis from Naval Station Norfolk. I'll be there for probably another 2.5 years or
Yeah.
2 years or so. And then I'll just have one more. And what the military will do, because I'll be bumping up against what's called my mandatory removal date. If I tell them I want to retire here, I know we have a removal date. It sounds awful, but if you're not a general officer, you do have to go at some point. So I do have a mandatory removal date in 2026.
So if a war happens to break out, is there a chance that you could have to go?
Well, I have a medical condition right now that's going to keep me home for I'm about 3 years. I won't be
Okay.
allowed to go forward. But yeah, once that clears up, I'll still have 3 more to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I'm all good medically at that point, I would still have to go.
Well, I mean, I think he might not understand that in the level of fear and worry is not the same at this level as it was when she was
Sure.
lower ranking.
It's
So, from that standpoint, she's the command staff. She's not necessarily going forward like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Still, you're going into a combat environment. You don't know. There's no set prescription for that. So,
well, you mentioned that Panama's your goal
Mhm.
to get there in 6 years or so. You bought some land. I noticed through your social posts you go back there to visit family. It looks like every once in a while.
I've been going back to Panama since 2004, and I gone back at least once or twice a year, even sometimes. It became even more important for me to start going back in 2009 when my mother passed away. She's actually buried in Panama. I usually go around her anniversary date if I can to pay respects to her, and we'll get together with my family down there, and we'll celebrate life, from that standpoint, because my mother was not one of these people that was always like down or sad. I mean, she was just always full of joy, and she would be looking at us like we were crazy. We were crying over her. So it's always about celebrating, life. Yeah, but then the other part of it is that when I don't go, if I'm not able to make it, I try to go there for carnival, man. Like, I'm in there like partying, my butt off with my family. She's been to carnival as well, and it's a totally different.
It's crazy, man.
It's
Crazy.
it's
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
It's all day.
you have a
all day,
whole-
all night.
You have a whole entire country celebrating. I mean, it's crazy. Any town you go to, there's a party going on for like 5 days before Mardi Gras, kind of thing. So it's just crazy. But yeah, I spend time with my family. I've taken my kids down there to experience the culture, to know where I come from, what makes up their other half.
Yeah.
My daughter was able to experience a quinceañera, which is our coming of age versus the Sweet 16 is like at 15 years old. And I was able to do one for her in Panama with family, and she wore the traditional dress. And I mean, it was a phenomenal experience for her.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think that she'll hold on to for the rest of her life. So yeah, it's definitely something that can get, whitewashed, in some regard. And, you're here and it's just, you become Americanized. You tend to lose some of that, specifically when, I've been in the military, she's military, we live in the US. I really did a poor job in speaking to them in Spanish. I didn't make that a priority, and I should have. I regret that. One of the things that was supposed to happen was every year they were supposed to go to Panama and live with my mother for the summer to get that immersion, to get the language. But unfortunately, we were never able to get that wish because my mother's passing. But in some way, shape, or form, whenever I can go there and I bring them with me, it really is about just soak it all in, man. This is another part of you.
But as far as the language goes, his family works very, very hard to speak English. So it makes it hard for us to try our Spanish because they're so busy speaking English.
Yeah, they try to.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
It's just about enjoying life, man. Yeah, it's funny, this podcast, the episodes that I've listened, I mean, you really are finding people. I mean, kudos to you for pursuing what you're doing, man, because, listen, I mean, sometimes it's just finding that those little snippets in your life, that you reach out to and you just soak it in, man. Do what you need to do. And like the people that you have on your podcast, they're really living their life and they're happy, and
Yeah.
that's cool.
That's what I'm trying to find, I mean, the people have different jobs, different careers, different interests, different hobbies.
Hmm.
If those things aren't bringing you happiness, then what the hell are you doing? You
Exactly.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you have a job that you hate and you're going to be miserable at home, you're going to be miserable when you're grocery shopping, you're just going to be a miserable person if
Right.
80% of your life is spent doing something that you hate. So find those things that bring you happiness and go all in.
Mhm.
And and that's why when I started this podcast, I was like, I got to talk to you because when I see you guys on Sundays, you're like the happiest family I've ever seen.
Well,
No, I'm
thank you.
serious. Like, and when you walk into Hurley's, because everybody's like, hey, and they all like run up and give you hugs and high fives and all that stuff because you guys like exude that happiness and people want to be around it, that positivity. And that's why I wanted to find out like what makes you you. Why are you that way?
Well, you know what? And on Sunday, like football, the one thing we didn't say for me, because I was raised with it, so the sound of it brings back a lot of, oddly enough, just a lot of happiness to
Yeah.
me. And it's a blessing. He is a Bills fan, and we don't have any separation in this house. We celebrate the same thing every week. We wait
Yeah.
all
Oh
winter
yeah.
for football
I
to
mean, like
come back, or all
I literally
spring,
shake
summer.
when the season started. I start shaking. No, but I mean, Matt, really, it comes down to. I mean, first of all, I think in general, you would find that most Latino people are very happy in general. For the most part, I mean, there's just not too much you can throw at us that we are not going to be happy over. I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, so culturally, some of that stuff. But I mean, the other part is that my personality, I really love meeting people. I just do. I
Yeah.
gravitate and try to pull out and find the best in people. I don't know. It's always been this thing because I remember what it's like to feel sad, in certain times. I know what it's like to to feel like you're that awkward person in a room that doesn't fit in. I've been that. Grew up that
Yeah.
way because I had the thickest accent until later on in life. I finally was able to get rid of it because my mother forced me. They're going to treat you different if you don't lose your accent. You need to lose it. So I practice with that dictionary every single day to lose the accent. So I know what it's like to kind of be shunned, put in a corner, and feel like you're left out. I just want to make everyone part of my team, my group. I'm always recruiting people. Hey, come see us here. Hey, why don't you come this way? I'm partying over here. Come with me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. You definitely do that.
So yeah.
Yeah, he's always trying to plan a party. He's the last 2 months, let me tell you, Matt,
Oh
of
my
our
God.
23 years together, the last 2 months have challenged him more than anything else.
I bet it has. I was going to ask about that. I
Yeah.
bet it has. How are you guys holding up with all this?
I'm an introvert, so I'm okay.
You're fine.
Dude, she has not skipped a beat. She's doing well. On the other hand, I've been very I've kind of been down a little bit. I have been down, but I've handled it okay. We're fine. I was in a unique situation because I had quit my last job. I was getting ready to start my new job, and then all of a sudden they put the kibosh on it, and I was like, "Oh crap!" And I couldn't
Oh
collect
no.
unemployment or anything like that because I didn't have a job that I could collect from. Either way. So struggled with that, and then I've been working still in medical devices in some shape or form. I have most of the jobs that I've had. I have direct contact with patients and caregivers like doctors, physicians and nurses, and there's just something about being able to provide care or to just give a part of myself to people that I miss. I have to give. Like I don't know how to explain it. There's this quota that I set for myself as far as just those interactions with people, and I've been missing that for the longest time. So the other day when I received the phone call that we haven't forgot about you, we're so excited. We really want you to come, on board, and whatever we need to do to make it happen. We're afraid you're going to find another job. We want you. That was the greatest feeling, and I start on Monday. So
That was the
That's awesome.
greatest feeling for us.
Congratulations.
I'm so
thank you.
glad. Oh my God,
Yeah.
he needed it.
So
I'm excited for
so
him.
yeah, so that's the thing, man. I'm
Yeah.
just hoping to make people happy and touch their lives. That's one of the things that I live for is just being a part of other people's lives, and any way that I can help, I'm trying to. So,
All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
well, I mean, I can talk all day, man.
Mhm.
I know you can.
I can talk all day.
I mean,
I had the longest
there's
podcast
some.
in history. He let me. So.
Well, I only got a couple minutes left. I mean, there's some shit going on in the world right now. We're recording this on May 30th. The past few days have been rough for the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know Mary's in the army, so she probably can't talk about the president.
I cannot.
No,
Please don't make me do it.
Okay, so I'm not going to say.
cannot.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to ask you any questions, but I feel like some people are just stoking the flames here.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah, and I will tell you that, we were actually having a conversation about this the other day. It's, I've been seeing some of the things that are going down. And for me, as you can imagine, I really gravitate towards humanity. I mean, that is, I feel like we're all put on this earth to love each other, to help each other any way that we can. And to see some of the things that have been going down, with the police and, the racism that exists. It's like, gosh, enough is enough. I mean, when is it going to end? Because it is frustrating as a human being that truly, genuinely loves people and wants the best out of others and will do anything to bridge that together, to see it just sometimes being taken for granted or being spat on. That's just the way that, I don't understand it. There's just something about that concept of thinking that I just do not understand. And it's sad. It's sad to me.
Yeah. It's sad to me too. And I think what's sad also is that this isn't anything new. I feel like because of the prevalence of cell phone cameras and filming it, it's just being brought to light more.
Yes.
And for the people who sit with blinders on, they don't realize that it's happening, so they don't think it's happening.
Right.
But this has been going on forever in our country.
It has.
I don't know what to do, how I can help bring about change.
Well, and it's funny. I was asked that question. I had made a post on Facebook and someone asked that question, as a white male or a white, person with privilege, whatever you want to call it. What can I do? And it's not about anything specific. It's about just being aware of, where you stand in society and just teaching. If you truly believe in the cause, you teach and you raise your kids the right way so they can stand up for the people that cannot stand for themselves or who are being kicked down as they're trying to stand up. You've got to speak up and say something. That's really what you can do. When someone sees you doing that, they'll say, you know what, he's on my team. But sitting there in silence and not doing anything to change the narrative, it's these kinds of conversations. I mean, I would love to potentially do something based on this topic and, in the future at some point. But to have those talks about, racism, Black, white, Latino, Asian, whatever, I think it's good to be able to have that social narrative and to change it, and really just put it out there and see that, hey, we can, listen, we don't have to agree on everything because you know what, our cultures, whether religious, background, we may not necessarily believe everything the exact same way, but we can all at least, get down to that common denominator, and that's we're human beings. I know it's cliche, but
No, I think you're right. I think silence is the worst thing.
Yeah.
That we as a society can continue to do.
Right.
People have been silent or pretending like it hasn't been happening for far too long, and speaking up and calling it out when you see it is one way to fight it for sure.
But yeah, man. But yeah, I love you and your family, man. You guys are great.
Yeah, you guys too, man.
Can't wait to see you soon.
I know.
I hope so. God, I hope so.
I know.
Yeah. Keep fighting a good fight, man. It's hard.
If we can't get together to watch these games, we're gonna have to do like some kind of like virtual hangout or something so we can all watch together.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Yeah, thank God for technology, right? That we could do that.
And hopefully, they'll have games with fans in attendance so you guys can go up and enjoy it.
Yeah, we're waiting to hear what the only thing that we've been told right now is, of course, we've got our season tickets, they're paid for.
Yeah.
They just haven't made a decision on the stadium and what they're going to do with it. If they have to reduce capacity or no capacity, they may not allow season ticket members, and then everyone has to purchase their own ticket if it's a reduced capacity. And then we've just paid for 2021. So that's pretty much how that's going to work if we aren't allowed to use our tickets.
I mean, it's horrible to say, but the first thing that I thought of when all this stuff went down was this is supposed to be our year.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, you should have seen me when that Stephon Diggs announcement was made. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was thinking somebody was playing like this big prank on me. However, the funny thing is that I think I posted it, the day prior. I had put on Stephon Diggs' Twitter I'd say, come get saucy with the Bills. And sure enough, he got picked up with the Bills. It was the craziest thing. It's like I was following him. I was like, come get saucy with the Bills. And sure enough, the announcement came later. I was like, wow. So pretty cool, man. So I'm excited, man. I think we have a really good squad. I will put our defense up against anyone in the NFL. Our offense has taken a big turn for the better, hopefully. The only one that we're kind of worried about is the quarterback. That's the most important position right now. Is trying to figure out, okay, is he going to be able to do what we think he can do? Let's see.
Well, you know what? He made big strides from year 1 to year 2. So hopefully there's another big stride coming for year 3. And I think there is.
I think there is too.
I think so too.
I think there is too.
All right, guys. That's my time.
All right.
Thank you,
hey,
man.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much,
having
man. I
us.
appreciate it. All right.
Yeah, I love you guys, and I hope to see you soon.
Love you too.
Yeah.
You take care. Say hello to the whole fam, okay?
All right, we'll do.
All right, take care.
Hey, just like I told you, right? Great people, infectious personalities. They're the type of people that you just want to hang out with and go grab a beer with and have some fun with. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to be on this show, make sure you hit me up at caughtbyhappy@gmail.com. Let me know what's going on in your life. Let me know about what hobbies you got going on. Let me know about what you like to do, what your passion projects are. Maybe you started a business. Maybe you're thinking about starting a side hustle and you want to come on and talk about it, talk about your passion. Let's do it. caughtbyhappy@gmail.com. You can also reach me on any of my social networks where you might find me out there on the internet, Instagram, the Facebooks. I'm even on the TikTok, but I got to tell you, my TikToking has taken a turn. I'm into the land of absurd. So it might not quite be on brand with Caught by Happy, but it's called Caught by Happy. That's where you can find me on TikTok. I'm acting like an idiot, but my kids love it. Follow me if you want. All right, everybody, that's it for me. I'm going to see you next time. I hope you hold your loved ones close and you do what you can to speak out against injustice. Don't stay silent, because silence is complacency and being complicit. And we don't want that. We want change. We want positive change in this country. Well, that's it. I'll see you guys later. The Caught by Happy podcast is powered by Ring Media. You can look us up at ringmedia.com. It's RRING media.com. For a full range of podcast editing services or video editing services, ringmedia.com. And you can also join the Ring Media network of powerful, amazing creators just like yourself, where we can help empower each other to be the best creators that we can possibly be. ringmedia.com. All right, everybody, I'll see you next time.